The AuraFrame's Ghost, Chapter 1. Life after retirement, after my husband passed, after my only child left for college and then built her own life, had settled into a quiet rhythm. I'm Clara, 60 years old, a retired teacher living in the home my parents built. My days were filled with gardening, reading, and occasionally volunteering at the local library. I was comfortable, settled, and my memories, like old photographs, seemed neatly arranged in my mind's album. Or so I thought. My niece Sarah, a bright, technologically savvy young woman, had always worried about me being too unplugged. For my last birthday, she presented me with a sleek, minimalist digital photo frame. "It's an AuraFrame Smart Display, Aunt Clara," she'd announced, beaming. "It connects to your cloud photos, uses AI to intelligently curate your memories, and even enhances them. No more digging through dusty albums." I was skeptical, but indulged her. She set it up, linking it to my vast collection of digital photos on Google Photos. Thousands of snapshots accumulated over decades, from old scanned family prints to recent smartphone pictures. The AuraFrame sat on my living room mantelpiece, a discreet black rectangle that occasionally flickered to life, displaying a comforting slideshow of cherished moments: my wedding day, my daughter's first steps, family holidays, my parents' smiling faces. It was lovely, a constant, gentle reminder of a life well lived. But then the glitches started. At first they were subtle, almost imperceptible. A slight shift in the background of the familiar vacation photo. Was that an extra tree, or had I simply forgotten it? A faint ripple in a video of my daughter's graduation. Just a compression artifact, I told myself. My eyes weren't as sharp as they used to be, and digital technology was always doing strange things. Then they became more distinct. A photo of my parents on their anniversary, taken in our backyard, now showed a small, intricate bird feeder in the corner that I distinctly did not remember. I checked the original file on my computer. No bird feeder. I dismissed it as a minor software bug. Perhaps a new enhancement feature I hadn't understood. One afternoon, I was having tea in the living room when the AuraFrame displayed a picture that stopped me cold. It was my late grandfather, Elara Vance, a kind, stern man with a twinkle in his eye, a man I adored. He was standing on the steps of the old town hall, a place I recognized from many family photos. But next to him, clear as day, was a young woman I had never seen before. She was strikingly beautiful, with dark, wavy hair, and she bore a faint, unsettling resemblance to me, or perhaps a younger version of my mother. In her arms, she held a baby, swaddled in a delicate blanket. Below the photo, the AuraFrame's smart caption feature identified the baby: Elara Vance. Elara Vance, my grandfather, Elara Vance, with a woman I didn't know, holding a baby named Elara Vance. My grandfather had only 2 children, my mother, Margaret, and my uncle, Richard. There was no Elara. I had never heard that name in my family, not once. I stared at the image on the screen, a chill seeping into my bones. This wasn't a subtle glitch. This was an outright fabrication, a complete alteration of a core memory. My grandfather, a man whose life I thought I knew intimately, standing with a mystery woman and a baby. My first thought was that the AuraFrame was broken, or worse, hacked. I immediately pulled out my laptop and navigated to my Google Photos library, searching for the original photo of my grandfather at the town hall. I found it. It was exactly as I remembered. My grandfather, alone, on the steps, smiling faintly. No woman, no baby. No, Elara Vance. My heart pounded. Was I losing my mind? Was my memory truly that unreliable? Or was this something else? I tried to dismiss it, but the image of the young woman and Elara Vance lingered in my mind. The resemblance to my mother, or even to me, was uncanny. And the name? Vance. It wasn't a random name. Over the next few days, more enhanced photos emerged on the AuraFrame. My grandfather, Arthur, would appear in photos where he was usually alone, now with this same mysterious woman, sometimes in the background of a familiar family picnic, sometimes subtly visible in a crowd at a local fair I remembered attending as a child. In one photo, taken in what looked like the old family farmhouse kitchen, the young woman was clearly present, stirring something at the stove, her back mostly to the camera, but her profile unmistakable. A fleeting glance at the AuraFrame's caption, Arthur and Friends. No mention of Elara Vance this time, but her presence was undeniable. The details were always subtle, almost ghost-like, but present. It was as if the AI was taking existing photos and subtly weaving in this unknown woman, this unknown child, into the fabric of my past. The logical part of my brain screamed glitch, malfunction, error. But another part, a primal, unsettling intuition, whispered something else entirely. What if these weren't glitches? What if the AuraFrame wasn't fabricating, but rather revealing? What if it was detecting faint, previously unnoticed details in my vast digital archive? Old scans of forgotten physical photos, distant backgrounds in crowd shots, old news clippings embedded in file metadata, and rendering them prominent, bringing them to light? What if these enhanced memories were leading me towards a truth, a family secret so deeply buried that it had been erased from conscious memory, from official family narratives? My grandfather, Arthur Vance, a kind, stern, traditional man. Could he have had a secret, a hidden child, a life before the one I knew? The AuraFrame, sitting silently on my mantle, had become less a comforting display of memories and more a mysterious oracle, slowly, relentlessly, revealing a hidden past, a ghost in the machine that was forcing me to question everything I thought I knew about my family. I had to understand what it was showing me. I had to find the truth behind Elara Vance. Chapter 2.1. The AuraFrame, my niece's well-intentioned gift, had become an unsettling oracle, subtly inserting a mysterious young woman and a baby named Elara Vance into my cherished family photographs. My logical mind battled with my intuition. Were these glitches, fabrications, or was the AI, in its pursuit of enhancement, unearthing a truth so deeply buried it had been erased from my family's conscious memory? The uncanny resemblance of the woman to my mother or myself, and the prominent Vance surname, spoke of a hidden familial connection. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, was at the center of these unsettling images. Could he have had a secret child, a daughter named Elara, before his marriage to my grandmother? This thought was a profound shock, challenging the very foundation of my understanding of my family history. I decided to meticulously investigate the AuraFrame and its connection to my digital photo library. Sarah had told me it used advanced AI. Could this AI be doing more than just curating? Was it actively performing facial recognition, scanning metadata, perhaps even drawing connections to publicly available information online that I hadn't consciously sought out? I contacted AuraFrame's customer support, feigning confusion about new features that seemed to add people to old photos. The representative was polite but unhelpful, attributing it to advanced AI learning algorithms and personalized content suggestions. They assured me the original files were untouched on my cloud service. This confirmed my suspicion. The AuraFrame wasn't altering the original files, but rather generating new versions of them, or displaying them in a way that synthesized data. My next step was a deep dive into my Google Photos library. I had thousands of photos, scanned negatives, old prints, modern digital shots. Could there be faint clues, background figures, blurred faces, or hidden metadata that the AuraFrame's AI was picking up, that my human eye had missed for years? I started a painstaking manual review of every photo featuring my grandfather and any photo taken at locations significant to his early life: the old town hall, the family farmhouse, local fairs. I searched for anything, no matter how subtle: a reflection in a window, a partial face in a crowd, a name in a distant caption, a date anomaly. It was like searching for ghosts in a vast digital graveyard. And then I found it in a scanned photo of a local community picnic from the early 1960s, a photo I had glanced at countless times. There she was, faintly in the far background, partially obscured by a tree, but unmistakably the young woman from the AuraFrame's enhanced photos. Her features were blurred, but her dark wavy hair and slender silhouette were identical. She was holding a baby. My grandfather, Arthur, was in the foreground, seemingly unaware of her, or deliberately looking away. This was not an AI fabrication. This was a detail from an old physical photograph, a detail so subtle it had gone unnoticed for decades, but the AI had processed it, sharpened it, and brought it to the foreground of my attention. This was a profoundly unsettling realization. The AuraFrame wasn't inventing. It was seeing. It was detecting fragments of a buried truth, connecting them, and presenting them in a way that forced me to acknowledge them. The next step was to research the identity of Elara Vance and the mysterious young woman. The AuraFrame had given me two key pieces of information: the name Elara Vance for the baby, and the visual resemblance to the young woman. I also had the faint visual evidence from the old scanned photo and the general time frame of the early 1960s. I began to delve into genealogical records, focusing on the Vance family lineage. I searched for birth records, census data, and local newspaper archives from the early 1960s in the region where my grandfather lived. I looked for any mention of a child named Elara Vance, or a young woman with a similar description who might have been connected to my grandfather. The local newspaper archives from that era were a treasure trove of mundane community news, but sometimes hidden within them were clues. I searched for social announcements, birth notices, or any local gossip columns that might hint at a scandal or an unusual event. This was a period in history, the early 1960s, where unwed pregnancies and illegitimate children were often a source of intense shame and were actively hidden by families. Institutions for fallen women or discreet adoptions were common. The thought that my grandfather, Arthur Vance, a man of such integrity, could have been involved in such a secret was deeply disturbing. Yet the evidence was mounting. The search for Elara Vance, for the truth about her mother and her connection to my grandfather, became an urgent, almost obsessive quest. The AuraFrame, sitting silently on my mantelpiece, continued to subtly, almost imperceptibly, weave these hidden figures into the tapestry of my family's past, a digital ghost whispering secrets that had been buried for too long. Chapter 2.2, The AuraFrame, my niece's technological gift, had become a digital detective, unearthing faint, previously unnoticed details from my vast photo library and rendering them prominent. The discovery of the young woman and baby Elara Vance in a scanned photo from the early 1960s, a detail my human eye had missed for decades, was profound. The AI wasn't fabricating, it was seeing, connecting fragments of a buried truth and forcing me to acknowledge them. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, a man I thought I knew, was at the heart of this unfolding mystery. My genealogical research into the Vance family, focusing on the early 1960s, was painstaking. I searched for birth records of an Elara Vance or a child with a similar name, for any records of a young woman connected to my grandfather during that period. The secrecy surrounding unwed pregnancies and adoptions in that era meant records were often scarce or sealed. However, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source within my own digital archive. While reviewing old scanned documents that my mother had digitized years ago, a collection of family correspondence, old recipes, and local community flyers, I stumbled upon a faded, handwritten notation on the back of an old recipe card for Grandma Vance's apple pie. The handwriting was my mother's, a quick, almost subconscious scribble. It read, Eleanor plus Arthur equals Elara. Spring 1963, Cedar Creek home. Eleanor. My mother's handwriting. Arthur. Elara. Spring 1963, Cedar Creek home. Eleanor. This was a new name, not the Eleanor Vance who was my mother's secret sister, as revealed in a previous story. Though I must be careful not to conflate separate story threads within Clara's overarching journey. This was a distinct individual. Could she be the young woman in the photos? In Cedar Creek home? That sounded like a home for unwed mothers, or an orphanage, common institutions for discrete births and adoptions in that era. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, was indeed connected to this Eleanor and Elara. This scribbled note, a fleeting, almost subconscious confession from my mother, was the strongest piece of evidence yet. It implied a direct relationship between my grandfather, Arthur, and this Eleanor, resulting in the birth of Alana. I immediately shifted my research to Eleanor and Cedar Creek home. I searched for records of Cedar Creek home in the region from the early 1960s. I found that Cedar Creek home was a private institution operating quietly in a rural area, known for providing shelter and discretion for young women in difficult circumstances. It closed down in the late 1970s, like many similar homes. Records from such places were often heavily guarded or even destroyed to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. I tried to find any remaining records from Cedar Creek home or any individuals who might have worked there or who might have been residents there during the early 1960s. This was incredibly challenging, as the home prided itself on its secrecy. Simultaneously, I expanded my genealogical search for Eleanor. I searched for a young woman named Eleanor who might have been connected to my grandfather Arthur Vance around 1962 to 1963. Perhaps from a neighboring town or a less prominent branch of the family. The general rule of thumb for these homes was that the young women were often sent away from their local communities to avoid gossip. I also began to consider DNA testing as a more direct route to finding Elara or her descendants. If Elara was indeed my grandfather's child, she would be my half-aunt. That would mean a very strong DNA match, sharing roughly 25% of my DNA. If she had descendants, they would be my half-cousins, also showing significant DNA matches. I had already submitted my own DNA for previous searches, so it was already in the database. The AuraFrame, meanwhile, continued its uncanny work. Now that I knew to look for Eleanor and Elara and Cedar Creek Home, the AI seemed to find them with increasing frequency. Photos would pop up showing my grandfather Arthur subtly in the background of images that seemed to be taken near Cedar Creek Home, or showing the young woman Eleanor in the periphery of photos of local town events from the period, sometimes even with a baby carriage. It was as if the AI was taking the fragmented information I had and using it to hone its search, revealing more and more connections. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. The technology, seemingly a benign photo frame, had inadvertently become a key to unlocking a hidden family history, a secret buried for decades, a secret about my beloved grandfather, Arthur, and a child he had before his marriage to my grandmother. The implications were immense, reshaping my understanding of my family, their choices, and the societal pressures that led to such profound concealment. I was closer than ever to finding Elara, my half-aunt, a woman who would be in her early 60s, living a life unaware of her true biological origins, unaware of the family she came from, unaware of the secret that bound her to my own. Chapter 3.1. The handwritten note by my mother. Eleanor plus Arthur equals Elara. Spring 1963. Cedar Creek Home. Was the undeniable link. It confirmed my grandfather Arthur Vance's connection to a young woman named Eleanor, and the birth of a child, Elara, who would be my half-aunt. The AuraFrame, with its uncanny ability to bring faint details to light, had indeed been revealing a suppressed truth, a hidden branch of my family tree. The next critical step was to find Elara. She would be in her early 60s now, living a life shaped by an unknown past. My own DNA was already in the database from previous family searches, so I focused on analyzing my existing matches for any potential half-aunts or half-cousins. A half-aunt would share a significant percentage of DNA, around 25%, and her children, my half-cousins, would also show strong matches. The DNA match results were a maze of connections, but I focused on those with predicted relationships of half-aunt or half-cousin. And there it was, a strong match, a predicted half-aunt. The name, Elara Jones. Elara Jones, my heart leaped. This had to be her. Her age was listed as 61, perfectly aligning with a birth year of 1963. Her location was listed as being in a state several hours away. I looked at Elara Jones's public profile on the DNA database. She had a sparse profile, but enough to confirm her age and approximate location. Her adoptive parents were listed as deceased. There was no mention of biological family. She was likely unaware of her origins, unaware of the secret that bound her to my grandfather, Arthur Vance, and to our family. My fingers trembled as I composed the message to Elara Jones through the DNA service. I introduced myself, explaining the DNA match and my genealogical research. I gently, carefully began to share the story of my grandfather, Arthur Vance, the note from my mother, the discovery of Cedar Creek home, and the strong likelihood that she was my half-aunt, his daughter. I offered to share all the information I had found, the photos the AuraFrame had brought to light, and to answer any questions she might have. I emphasized the sensitivity of the revelation and my deep desire to connect. Sending that message felt like a monumental step, a moment of releasing a truth that had been buried for over 6 decades, a truth that could profoundly alter a woman's understanding of her entire life. The waiting period was filled with intense anticipation, a mix of hope and trepidation. How would she react to such a life-altering revelation? Then, a reply. A message from Elara Jones. Clara, I've received your message. Half-aunt? Arthur Vance? My biological father? Cedar Creek home? My adoptive parents were always open about my adoption, but they told me they knew very little about my biological family. I've always felt a sense of a missing piece in my life, a void I couldn't explain. I've done some searching myself, but the adoption records are sealed. Your message, it's overwhelming, but it resonates deeply. Arthur Vance, my father, I want to know more, Clara. So much more. I think you might have the answers to questions I've carried my entire life. I'm ready to learn. Her response was cautious but open, filled with a deep longing for answers. She wanted to know. My heart swelled with compassion and relief. We began to communicate, first through messages, then through phone calls. I shared with her the full story, the uncanny role of the AuraFrame in bringing these hidden details to light. The scanned photo from the early 1960s with her mother, Eleanor, and her as a baby in the background. My mother's handwritten note, the existence of Cedar Creek home, and the societal pressures of the era that led to such profound secrecy. I shared photos of my grandfather, Arthur, and stories of his life, giving her a glimpse of the man who was her biological father. Elara listened, tears often flowing freely as she absorbed the story of her biological parents and the circumstances of her birth and adoption. She recognized the photos of the young woman, Eleanor, from the AuraFrame's subtle enhancements, a sense of familiarity, a feeling of finally seeing a piece of her past made visible. We arranged to meet in person. The day I met Elara Jones, my half-aunt, my grandfather Arthur Vance's secret daughter, was a moment of profound emotional intensity. We embraced, two strangers connected by blood and a shared history, a history that had been buried for over 6 decades. There was an immediate sense of kinship, a deep understanding that transcended the years of separation. The focus now shifted to fully understanding the depth of the family secret, the identity of Eleanor, Elara's mother, and the full circumstances surrounding her birth and adoption. We wanted to give Elara the complete picture of her origins, to honor the memory of her biological mother, and to bring her home to the full history of her biological family. The AuraFrame sitting silently on my mantelpiece had become a quiet witness to this profound family reunion, a testament to the unexpected ways technology can reveal forgotten truths and bridge the chasm of lost time. Chapter 3.2 The Reunion with Elara, my half-aunt, my grandfather Arthur Vance's hidden daughter, was a deeply emotional and transformative experience. She was a kind, thoughtful woman, and the connection was immediate and profound. For Elara, meeting me and learning about her biological family, especially her father Arthur Vance, filled a lifelong void. The pictures revealed by the AuraFrame, showing her young mother Eleanor and her as a baby, provided a tangible link to a past she never knew existed. Our focus now was to piece together the complete story of Elara's biological mother, Eleanor, and the circumstances surrounding her birth and adoption at Cedar Creek home. My mother's scribbled note, Eleanor plus Arthur equals Elara, spring 1963, Cedar Creek home, was the key. But Eleanor remained a mystery. Who was she? What became of her? We began a meticulous search for Eleanor. From the early 1960s, specifically in the area surrounding Cedar Creek home and my grandfather's hometown. We used genealogical databases searching for women named Eleanor who might have been born around the same time as my grandfather or who might have had a connection to his family or the region. We also expanded our search for records from Cedar Creek home. While official patient records were sealed, we hoped to find administrative documents, staff lists, or even architectural plans that might offer clues. We discovered that a local historian, a retired nurse, had been compiling a history of neglected institutions in the state, including Cedar Creek home. We contacted her, explaining our personal connection to the home. The historian, Mrs. Evelyn Hayes, was a treasure trove of information. She had managed to gather some unofficial records, oral histories from former staff, and a few patient anecdotes, anonymized for privacy. She explained that Cedar Creek home operated under strict secrecy, often changing the names of patients to protect their anonymity. This was a common practice in homes for unwed mothers, meant to prevent the shame from following the young women. Mrs. Hayes shared a remarkable piece of information. A former nurse at Cedar Creek home had kept a personal, unofficial logbook of some patients, noting their real names and birth dates, a small act of defiance against the institution's erasure of identities. In this logbook, Mrs. Hayes found an entry for a young woman admitted in the summer of 1962, Eleanor Maywood, born 1943, admitted by family for nervous exhaustion, gave birth to female child, adopted privately, discharged spring 1963. Eleanor Maywood, born 1943. This was likely Elara's mother. The name change explained why she was so hard to find. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, had had a relationship with Eleanor Maywood. The pregnancy had led to her family sending her to Cedar Creek home, where she gave birth to Elara, who was then adopted. Now that we had a full name, Eleanor Maywood, we could research her life. We found that Eleanor Maywood had returned to her family's farm after leaving Cedar Creek home. She lived a quiet life, never marrying, and passed away in the late 1990s. She had lived a life marked by the secret she carried, the pain of losing her child. Elara felt a profound sense of connection to Eleanor Maywood. She saw photos of her biological mother as a young woman, a vibrant artistic soul, and recognized traits in herself. A shared love for painting. A certain quiet intensity. The pain of the past was immense, but the clarity it brought was healing. Elara had her mother's name, her story, and a clear understanding of the sacrifices made for her. The AuraFrame continued to display photos, now infused with a deeper meaning. The subtle figures in the background, the enhancements that had initially seemed like glitches, were now recognized as the ghost of Eleanor Maywood. Her presence, interwoven into the early years of my grandfather's life, a love story, a secret, and a child born of circumstances shrouded in the societal shame of the era. The technology, a simple digital photo frame, had truly acted as an unwitting catalyst, revealing a hidden branch of our family tree that spanned generations. It had forced me to confront a past I never knew, to question the narratives I had always accepted, and to embrace a new, expanded understanding of my family. The story of Arthur Vance, Eleanor Maywood, and Elara Jones became a testament to the resilience of human connection, the way truth finds its way to the surface, and the profound healing that comes from knowing who you are and where you come from. My home, once filled with the quiet comfort of known memories, was now vibrant with the unfolding story of a rediscovered past, a testament to the unexpected power of technology to reveal the ghosts of our lives and bring them, finally, home. Chapter 5.1. The complete story of Elara's origins had finally unfolded. Her biological mother, Eleanor Maywood, a vibrant young woman who had a relationship with my grandfather, Arthur Vance, in the early 1960s. The pregnancy, the shame, the hidden journey to Cedar Creek home, Elara's birth and her subsequent adoption. The AuraFrame, in its uncanny ability to bring faint details to light, had indeed been revealing a suppressed truth, a hidden branch of my family tree leading me to my half-aunt, Elara Jones. The emotional weight of this discovery for Elara was immense. She had found not only her biological father in my grandfather Arthur, but also her biological mother, Eleanor Maywood, a woman who lived a quiet life, never marrying, carrying the secret of her lost child. Elara visited Eleanor's grave, a small, unassuming plot in her hometown cemetery, bringing flowers, a tangible symbol of the love that had finally found its way home. Our family, a network of previously unknown connections, began to expand. Elara connected with other distant relatives on both her Maywood and Vance sides, embracing the full tapestry of her biological heritage. The AuraFrame, once a source of unsettling confusion, now played a comforting role. Its enhanced photos, no longer glitches, but glimpses into a past made whole, showing Elara's mother, Eleanor, and her grandfather, Arthur, in their younger days, their connection subtly illuminated. But the story wasn't just about uncovering secrets. It was also about understanding the profound impact of those secrets on the lives involved. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, a man I respected and adored, had lived with this secret for decades. What was his story? How did he cope with having a child he couldn't acknowledge? How did he reconcile that with his marriage to my grandmother and the life he built with my mother and uncle? My grandmother, a loving woman, also lived with this hidden truth, whether she knew about it or not. The timing of Elara's birth was before my grandparents' marriage, but it was still a truth that could have shattered the carefully constructed facade of their lives. I decided to delve deeper into my grandfather Arthur's life, particularly the period leading up to his marriage to my grandmother. I searched for old letters, journals, or any personal effects that might shed light on his thoughts and feelings during that time. My mother had saved many of his things, often tucked away in dusty boxes. I found a small, leather-bound journal among my grandfather's belongings. It wasn't a daily diary, but a place where he occasionally jotted down thoughts, reflections, and prayers. The entries from the early 1960s were sparse, but deeply poignant. He wrote of a great sorrow, a mistake that cost him dearly. He spoke of a beautiful girl and a precious life he couldn't claim. The entries were filled with regret, with a sense of profound loss, and a quiet resignation to a fate he felt was deserved. He never mentioned Eleanor by name, but the timing of the entries coinciding with Elara's birth made it clear he was writing about her and her mother. October 1962, the weight of it. A father, but no claim. A child, but no embrace. God forgive me, forgive us both. She deserves a life free of this burden. My heart aches, but this is the only way to protect her, to protect them all. The journal entries revealed a man tormented by his choices, deeply affected by the loss of his child, but ultimately believing he was acting for the greater good, protecting Elara from the stigma of illegitimacy and his own family from social shame. It was a heartbreaking glimpse into his internal struggle, adding a layer of tragic humanity to the secret. My grandmother, did she know? There was no direct evidence, no mention in my grandfather's journal, but she was a shrewd and intuitive woman. It was possible she knew or suspected and chose to live with the truth in silence, a testament to her strength and devotion to my grandfather. The AuraFrame, quietly displaying a slideshow of family photos, now seemed like a silent confidant, its enhancements no longer unsettling, but serving as a visual bridge to a once-hidden past. It showed my grandfather, Arthur, as a younger man, sometimes subtly with Eleanor Maywood in the background, a silent testament to a love that created a child, a love that was sacrificed on the altar of societal expectations. The journey had been long, starting with a simple digital photo frame and a few strange glitches. It had led me to question my own memories, to uncover a buried family secret, to find a lost half-aunt, and to understand the profound choices and sacrifices made by my grandparents' generation. The technology had been the unwitting catalyst, but the true story was one of human resilience, hidden love, and the enduring power of truth to emerge even after decades of silence. Chapter 5.2, The AuraFrame, my unexpected guide, had taken me on a profound journey through my family's hidden history. The journal entries from my grandfather, Arthur Vance, revealed the depth of his regret and his conviction that he had made the only choice possible in a judgmental era: to protect Elara from the stigma of illegitimacy and to spare his family from scandal. This understanding added a layer of tragic humanity to the secret that had spanned generations. Elara and I, now bonded by this shared history, continued to explore the legacy of the choices made in the 1960s. We understood that the decisions, though painful, were products of their time, driven by societal pressures that are difficult to comprehend in today's more open world. There was no room for blame, only for empathy and understanding. Our connection, a direct result of the AuraFrame's uncanny abilities, blossomed into a deep friendship. Elara had found a sense of belonging she had always longed for. Un poquito más. Elara had found a sense of belonging she had always longed for. Un poquito más. Elara had found a sense of belonging she had always longed for. A direct link to her biological past. She found comfort in knowing that her biological mother, Eleanor Maywood, had been a kind, artistic soul, and that her father, Arthur Vance, had carried the pain of her absence throughout his life. The AuraFrame continued its silent, intelligent curation on my mantelpiece. It would occasionally display photos of my grandfather from the early 1960s, subtly enhanced to show Eleanor Maywood in the background, or even a fleeting glimpse of a baby carriage. These were no longer glitches, but welcomed glimpses into the forgotten narrative, a quiet acknowledgement of the hidden love story that had led to Elara's existence. The technology, initially unsettling, had become a comforting presence, a visual bridge to a once erased past, reminding me of the profound journey it had facilitated. I also shared the story with my daughter, who was initially shocked, but ultimately deeply moved by the complexity and resilience of our family's history. She understood the weight of the secrets, the reasons they were kept, and the beauty of the truth finally coming to light. Our family expanded not just in numbers, but in its understanding and empathy for the generations that came before. The experience profoundly changed my perspective on memory itself. I had always trusted my own recollection, the clear album of my life, but the AuraFrame taught me that memories aren't always complete, and that sometimes the past holds truths that are deliberately hidden or simply overlooked until technology, in its relentless pursuit of data, brings them to light. It made me wonder what other stories, what other lives might be subtly woven into the fabric of our digital existence, waiting for the right algorithm to reveal them. The hidden branch of our family tree, once completely unknown, was now vibrant and strong. Elara had connected with her half-siblings on her Maywood side, children of Eleanor's later acknowledged relationships, or her siblings' children, and our extended Vance family welcomed her with open arms. Family reunions were now larger, richer, filled with new faces and a deeper understanding of our shared heritage. My life, once quiet and predictable, had been irrevocably altered by a gift of technology. The AuraFrame, intended to simply display photos, had become a catalyst for uncovering a profound family secret, revealing a hidden child, and forging unexpected bonds. It was a testament to the fact that even the most carefully guarded truths can find their way to the surface, and that sometimes the most advanced technology can lead us back to the most fundamental human connections. The ghosts of the past, brought to life by pixels and algorithms, had finally found their rightful place, not as haunting figures, but as beloved members of a family made whole.